Hi there. Hello and aloha. Welcome to my third video, my third creation. I never really advertised the first two. They're out there. You can watch them if you like. But they were more for me, and they were more for certain individuals that would understand exactly what it is that I said in there, although most would not. Anybody can start here if they like. This one is for the public. This one is for you guys and gals, you ladies and gentlemen, for your consideration. This third video will include a summary of the highlights and main points of the first two videos. So like I said, anyone can start from here. If you have interest in the other two, then you can go ahead and watch them. First things first though, the most important part that we have to go through. I'm going to go over the legal disclaimer that is affixed to all of these videos that I am creating, and a summary of the reclamation of life section that is also affixed to all of these creations of mine. So let's go over that now. Legal disclaimer. All views and opinions expressed in this creation are the views and opinions of my life experience thus far. I, Scott Prier of Earth, promise to tell the truth of my experience in all content details expressed in this creation. I cannot say that this is the truth of anything other than my experience as a whole thus far. Each viewer will have to decide for themselves what this is to them, if anything at all. All I share in this creation is for the viewer's consideration only. You, the viewer, are completely responsible for any thought, feeling, and/or action that you choose to have and/or take from the information shared in this creation. I, Scott Prier of Earth, will not be held liable in any regard for the feelings, choices, and/or actions of another being, living or non-living. Your thoughts, feelings, choices, and actions are yours and yours alone. My thoughts, feelings, choices, and actions are mine and mine alone. The information shared in this creation is also not intended to be a substitution in any regard for professional medical services such as medical doctors, naturopathic doctors, psychologists, dentists, and all other professional forms of healthcare. Reclamation of life. Full version in terms of explanation is in my first video creation entitled The Human Microcosm Foundations, Part 1AA. This version is found in Part 1AA from the 250-minute mark to the 2050-minute mark of the creation. If you do not understand my quick summary of this that I'm about to state, then I highly recommend watching the 18-minute full version in Part 1AA that I just specified. Reclamation of Life nutshell size summary. On December 15th, 2020, in my first video, Part 1AA of the Human Microcosm Foundations, I rendered my contract with the Crown Corporation null and void. For multiple reasons, but first of all, the contract was never fully explained. All corporate entities are non-living entities that are of one polarity. All natural life works on two polarities. So, I now resonate with the system of nature. That's the system that I'm with, and there are no pieces of paper required to be with this system. The most important part of this is that the system of two polarities, organic life, nature, is not second to something that is an extension of organic life, which operates on one polarity. Corporate non-living entities never, ever trump a system of two polarities, organic life. I no longer agree to be a part of that polarized non-living system. Therefore, I am no longer under the jurisdiction of any corporate non-living entity anywhere in between the Crown Corporation and me, because I rendered it null and void at its root. And the Crown Corporation consists of London, D.C., Washington, D.C., and Vatican City. So if I rendered the contract null and void at its root or head, that means that all other corporate non-living entity contracts in between me and the root are officially null and void. And what does this mean? Well, the non-living corporate entity is actually run by an AI horde of beings that have pulled away from the original blueprint. They only have one law that they have to follow in order for them to be allowed to exist. That law is they are not allowed to break natural law. Let me just clarify something here. If any member of a corporate, polarized, non-living entity tries to impress its will upon a living entity, meaning me, you will be in direct violation of natural law. And you know what that means for you. Believe it or not, from the setup of this polarized non-living entity, they have actually broken no natural laws. And the big catch with this is that because the non-living polarized entity is of a herd hive mind, any natural law infraction that is performed by any member of any corporate entity will actually cause a ripple effect through the entire non-living corporate entity. And we'll discuss just who it was that suggested such a non-living corporate system to this crown corporation so that they would not be in violation of natural law and so that they could actually do what it is that they do here for the purposes of learning. So an official last reminder to all non-living corporate polarized entities. As long as this planet has a heartbeat and a human being has chosen to first and foremost be with and of this planetary heartbeat, no non-living polarized corporate authority can exact authority on such a being without being in direct violation of natural law. Such a being being a being that has chosen to live from two polarities and is now with the original blueprint of organic life, which is nature. If you're considering taking any action towards this creation of mine, and you are of a polarized, non-living corporate entity, please do watch the video in full and check with your superiors before taking any action. Also, it would be beneficial to watch the entire Reclamation of Life section, which can be found in Part 1AA between the 2-minute mark and the 21-minute mark. And once again, I do not need a piece of paper or ID to be with this system. I did not come with a piece of paper. All that is required is a beating heart, flowing blood, and lungs that contract and expand. And now, let's do a recap of Part 1 and 2, and then we'll get right into Part 3. So Part 1AA. Part 1AA was storyline, the who, what, where, when, how, and why in a brief general sense of who I am, what I'm interested in, and I had felt like I had been here before and that I was looking for something. I had also said that I was really interested in sound and music and feng shui, the art of placement, although I didn't realize that's what it was called at the time when I was a child. I was very interested in sports, trades, sciences, math, biology, and just life in general. And it was around the age of 8 years old that I realized from all my intense questioning that nobody really knew what we are or what we're doing here. I had also explained between the ages of 6 and 8, this is when lucid dreaming started for me. It was a very frequent occurrence. As well, I had said that I had major problems with heat or overheating in the summertime. Couldn't go outside between 11 and 5 each day. And it was that, although I didn't say this in the first part, it was that instigated this seeking and searching into just understanding energy and the basics of it. And I didn't realize that that's what it was about at the time. But that's kind of what I found this entire experience here to be about. I mentioned I had numerous run-ins with religion and the education system. Never elaborated on the education system, but I later noticed that the political system felt the same way to me, and something felt off. And I wasn't sure what it was, but I wanted to know what it was. With the religion, there were certain things that irritated me. the symbology of it, the polarized cross to the top or the polarized cross to the bottom for the satanic cross, just made me ask more about the middle or even cross. And I wanted to know what the difference of all three was. I would get headaches from these crosses. And then just my experience with confirmation and stuff, I shared a bit about that, and how I would always get a blanket type answer that was basically the Lord works in mysterious ways for any question that I had, which drove me insane. I then touched on my teenage years a bit, my 20s, which had 2 failed relationships in it. Couldn't really get into the whole 2.2 kids and 1.9 vehicles and a house and all that. I tried, but the entire thing felt like a trap to me. And so I didn't know where I belonged, and I kept kind of doing all these strange, different careers, oil field service careers, a variety of those, and then got it back into trades. And with all these career choices, they were all the result of chasing gut reactions and the ringing in my ears, basically. And I would just give 2 weeks notice and on to the next job. I got to learn a little bit about a lot of different things. I also mentioned in my 20s I developed an addiction to cocaine and was right into drugs and booze and partying. And it was work hard, play hard. And that was usually something I forgot to mention, though, was it was 2 weeks on and then a week off. And then on my week off, I would usually go out to the mountains or go camping or immerse myself in nature. And then back to work and drugs for 14 days. And I did that 14 and 7 shift, or 2 weeks on, 1 week off, for pretty much my entire 20s and early 30s. My early 30s became about more partying, more drugs, lots of dating, and just kind of playing the field in general on all streets and avenues that I was aware of. I then turned 33 in 2012, and everything started to shift, and I realized I wasn't really living a conscious life. I decided to make changes: psychology, yoga, qigong, bagua, and embodiment practices, which involved moving the main awareness out of the head and into the pelvic floor and feet, otherwise known as internal alchemical modalities. From here, I started wondering just what was the main conspiracy that all other conspiracies seem to be a distraction of. So many different conspiracies for so many different kinds of people to almost keep one running around in a loop. Right around this same time, I started getting into the shamanic side of things, or the spiritual side of things a little more. I started working with plant medicines, different venoms, combo, different snake venoms, scorpion venom, stuff like that. And my entire life started to change. And all that random seeking and information, it was all these little tidbits, they all started to slowly come together. Correlations were made. As I was putting myself together, everything that I had learned in terms of tidbits seemed to also be coming together. I had also shared during these years that I had become aware through the plant medicine and the poisons that there was some type of feathered reptilian creature in my magnetic field, or in my astral space, as some of you would call it. And the struggles thereof with that. And right around this same time, I also started dealing with a dog man, a man wearing a dog mask and a tunic and a kilt, some type of leather kilt, and meeting with this man on top of a pyramid in my dream time, and him teaching me strange things, which I touched on a few of those things in part 1 and 2. And then during my symbology research and language and sound and everything else, these things just kind of started to come together, and I realized that all these frequencies are actually symbols when they're played in water. So I needed to find someone who was accurate to 1/10 of a hertz, if not more, and I found one. And I stated who that was, and that's all in part 1 as well. And so I started looking at these frequencies. And I was able to match them up with all kinds of symbols, and they turned out to be a language that I recognized. I then started working with these certain frequencies in ways that I have not revealed to you yet. I will reveal those ways to an extent. I started accessing ancestral memory in ways that I cannot even begin to explain to you. That is a part that I didn't mention. And it all started with this little scenario that took place in my mid-30s. I was aware that the Satanic cross was associated with 666, but then someone had told me that the Christian cross and the number for Jesus was 888. Well, as soon as I heard that, this is what I saw in my mind's eye right here. And then all I could do was think about the even cross and how that's a 777, must be. And what does that mean? Well, I had no idea what the 777 was. Yet, like I had said, the tidbits were all coming together, and then I had gone into studying for my trade, pipe fitting. I did all 3 semesters in 1 year, and I took the year off work. And I also studied Chinese medicine and a bunch of these different, like Ayurvedic medicine and just other lesser known systems of medicine. And I started looking for just correlations between them. And man, what I realized between the Chinese medicine was that it was solar system medicine. And it was about simply knowing energetic pathways and how they fit into the body, or 12 meridians and 8 extraordinary vessels. When I started comparing this Chinese medicine system to pipe fitting or the basics of plumbing, and how meridians correlated with pipes and pressure differentials and flow, and how the vessels correlated with tanks and vessels and catches, and oh man, there was some wild stuff that started coming together. It wasn't just tidbits coming together. There was massive chunks coming together. And while I was studying this stuff, I started giving myself acupuncture as well. And that's a whole story in itself. Yet, one of the most important things I mentioned in part 1 and 2 was that if I screwed up with the acupuncture, which I did a lot, meridian exercises wouldn't fix it. They wouldn't level it out. They would increase it. Yet extraordinary vessel exercises, Qigong, an 8 brocade of Qigong, would neutralize it quite efficiently. And there was hundreds of other little correlations. And I'll be talking about several of them today, and the rest later. It was also in this same time frame that my embodiment practices, in combination with all the Bagua and Qigong and yoga, something started to fire in my lower half that wasn't supposed to be there, according to the 7 chakra system. And I'd always wondered about this with the 7 chakra system and the 8 extraordinary vessels in Chinese medicine. 7 chakra being of the yogic system. I had something firing between my solar plexus chakra and my heart. And I was scared of it at first, but then went into it and it integrated, and some strange things started to happen. And I talked about that in part 1. I started looking for correlations with this 8th chakra, and I found correlations with the Mayans and the man known as Zolotl, which was a man that wore a dog mask. Supposedly he was the master of the Soma chakra. So I started looking around, and I started looking for correlations in other religions of this 8th chakra, other than that it's honored in Chinese medicine. And I found some esoteric Christianity correlations. And then I went back and I started looking at these crosses again. First off, though, here is the esoteric Christianity correlation with the 8th chakra. I found this at a priory over in Europe, and I found it right away. And it's basically your chakra system right there. There's your red, orange, yellow, green, and then you have purple and white and gold. And white and gold are often substituted for indigo and violet. But yet there is this 8th personified figure there, hiding behind the yellow. Take a look. And notice how this 8th is kind of purplish and blue. And then back to the main picture here. Take note that the entire background is blue. And also take note where the red is. And there's also another sliver of red off to the right. To say that we will be discussing the red and blue pill today would be a grand understatement. Also, while I was looking at all these priories, on the outside of the building I noticed this symbol. Notice how there is only one entrance to this maze-style symbol. And it's in the bottom left. If it was a mirror image, bottom right, if it wasn't. Back to the crosses I went, and I'd literally looked at thousands of them by this time. Mostly of the Celtic. I was most interested in the Celtic ones. The 4 circles, and it was as though I was looking for a specific cross, it felt like. And then I noticed this style, which reminded me of a helicopter, kind of, was different. It's a little different than the other ones. Different symbology, and I wondered, that made me think about the one on the outside of the priories. Back to this one. And that got me thinking about helicopter and then those somatic frequencies. I mentioned that I was looking at those in part 1. But I couldn't find a baseline with those. I had mentioned in part 1 that I had been contacting various somatic frequency artists. And most of them would tell me that this particular one was an emotion like love or depression or something like that. And I kind of gathered that no one was really looking at specific numbers and correlating them to notes and correlating them to the human body. So I needed to find someone who was doing that. And I found one. I found a man who was a physicist and had been looking at sound or making sound visible for 13 years. And he had been working on his machine that created these somatics for 13 years and continuously calibrating. And that was good enough for me. I figured I would be able to cross-reference them with some of these symbols and that, if there's anything there at all, and I would be able to tell if they were on or not. This physicist also stated that his machine was accurate to 1/100th of a decimal point. And yes, in some cases, 1/100th of a decimal point could change the entire frequency. Sometimes there were ranges where it would stay similarly the same and then all of a sudden just change. So I asked this physicist what frequency this particular cymoglyph was. And he said he figured it was between 27 and 28 hertz, somewhere in there. So an A note, a note that resonates with the third eye. It's like, that didn't add up to me. And I talked about this stuff in part 1 with 6-fold geometry being A's and 8-fold geometry being C's. I'm going to elaborate on that in a lot more detail in this part C. And so I really wanted to see them move, not just pictures. I wanted to see them in action. And they were quite expensive, yet they were considered each a scientific piece of evidence. So I figured, what the hell, I'd go for it. And it was a lot of money for me, but see if there's any correlations. And so I ordered 4 A notes with common A49 note tunings today, and 1 C note. I only have 2 of the A notes that are currently functioning properly, and I have the C note. And the 2 A notes are, the first one is 432's A1 note at 27 hertz. The second one is 27.75 hertz, which is the A1 note for 444 hertz tuning. Then the 1 C note is 33.0 hertz, which is a C note and correlates with the root chakra. The 2 A notes, of course, correlate with the third eye. So let's have a look at those 2 A notes first, and then the C note of 33 hertz. The first audible C of 444 hertz tuning.
"27 hertz, re-imaged on CymaScope, gradually increasing amplitude." Increasing amplitude a little further, end of take. 27.75 Hz imaged on CymaScope, take 2, gradually increasing amplitude.
And with this one, take note of the center and what forms in the triangle there and its action. Talk about that later.
End of take. 33 Hz imaged on CymaScope, gradually increasing amplitude. End of take.
So on the A note, that is 27.75 Hertz, that resonates with here, which we'll be discussing in full detail later. There was a symbol there that I recognized in the center immediately. And as for the 33.0 Hertz, well, as soon as I saw that, it's a double toroidal. It even forms the magnetic field apple in the center of it. And the double toroidal is supposedly pseudoscience. Wilhelm Reich and Nikola Tesla supposedly knew a lot on the double toroidal. Might be worth looking into. And as for symbols with the 33.0 Hertz, I recognize that right away too. And here it is again with the symbol. And so there I'm thinking, okay, so there's this Soma Chakra thing, this volatile guy, me meeting with a man on top of a stepped pyramid in my lucid dream time, and now we have a Mayan symbol that is a double toroidal. And so I mentioned this in part one. I was also looking into my ancestry at this time, as it was suggested to me through ayahuasca, while dealing with the feathered reptilian creature that was in my space. And I had found out a lot about both sides of my family. And what I found out about my mother's side of the family was that there was a strong Mackay presence there, and there was a few others, and I mentioned a few of those in part one. But the Mackay presence was definitely at the forefront. There's multiple reasons for that as well. And what I discovered about them was that they came from a much older clan, a Pictish clan, that was called Maki, but it was spelled Micaoidth, so like Ode or Oedth, but it was pronounced E. And Mackay had actually been pronounced Maki as well. And so that had made me think about the story of King Lear. I had read this roughly around a year earlier. And I noticed that the eldest son of King Lear had the same spelling, and his name was pronounced E. So I didn't know if this was the same E, of course, but What I did feel at the time was I've never really typed in Pictish cross. And I don't know if this King Lear stuff is from Picts, but let's have a look at some Pictish crosses, I thought. You know, and I'd been looking for something my entire life. And I didn't think it would be a specific cross, but I'd been looking for this cross my entire life. I recognized it right away, and to me, this is the sword in the stone. What caught my eye with this one immediately was it's in a stone. It's a sword in a stone, and the top part, the cross part, or the handle, is raised. And the actual blade part is just a little higher than the actual face of the stone. What do I mean by it's in a stone? Well, funny thing about all these Pictish crosses, or many of them, let's say majority, they're all kind of in a stone. And most of them have the circles on the inner right angle corners, or notches like this one. And then we have the Hammer of Thor. Ooh, we're going to talk about that one. You guys are going to love it. And then back to these ones with the circles. I said in part one that I realized that these were a frequency as well, and they were a different frequency. And these ones with the circles were the alpha, and the 33 was the omega. And yet I had no idea what frequency this alpha one would be. So I started scanning online, and I found some somatic frequencies that looked like it. Contacted the creator, and he said it was 13 hertz. So I contacted Simoscope, and I said, let's check out 13 hertz. And here it is here, but first here's the picture of the one I found online. It's got the toroidal shape to it as well, 4 circles. Light breaking out at the 4 points of top and bottom and left and right. There it is here compared to the one I found online, the Pictish cross. And now here's 13 hertz from Simoscope, which would be a great comparison to this other artist's 13 hertz.
13 hertz imaged on Simoscope, gradually increasing amplitude.
And how interesting. It does form a cross pattern, and where the circles are on the sword and the stone cross, there's actually outward flow there that is slightly rounded.
End of take.
Yet it doesn't look like this one. This one has quite a toroidal shape to it, and it's got these little funnels kind of coming out of the center or into the center. Which way is it going? Well, I asked the creator of this one what was going on here. What's different? Care to share? And he said, well, his isn't shot in water. It's shot in oil. That had my full attention. In basic alchemy, oil is the spirit, body is the salt. What an interesting difference between water and oil. I asked him if he could recreate a video of it. And he said he figured he could. And here it is here. Just a little warning. Turn down the brightness of your TV screen or computer monitor until the somatic gets going. And if you want to increase the brightness at that point, then feel free to do so. And notice how this one starts to form. So you get the 4 points of light out there. And then it starts to form 3 crosses. One through the center, a little one up top, little one at the bottom, which is really just an extension in 3D of 4 more crosses, 4 more circles on the bottom and 4 more circles on the top, and then the 2 sides and the back. I also shared a couple experiences in part 1 about how 13 is such an unlucky number. And our culture looks at that cross of 3, the little one above, little one below, and the big middle one, as the satanic cross. Artist's name is Robert Borman. Check him out. It was also at this time, in part 1, where I talked about 12 meridians and 8 extraordinary vessels, and the Trinity, which is the head seat or king's seat, and the pelvic floor or Holy Grail, and the fusion of the two, which is the heart in the middle. And that's where this being, Jesus, sits in front of, is the fusion of the two. And so the 12 meridians here are represented by the 6 pairs of meridians, which is 6 on either side of Jesus, or 12 around 1, or 12 around the 2 that make the 1 from the 2 seats, which is the door which he sits in front of. And then there's the 4 rectangles on either side on the walls, which is the 4 and 4, or the 8 extraordinary vessels. Also take note that Jesus is wearing red and blue. The red light spectrum and the blue light spectrum. The positive and the negative. The omega and the alpha. The blue and the red pill. And then I shared that, I'm sorry folks, there is no around. Why did I share that? Because, my oh my, did I ever try every possible way around. And it didn't work for me. Perhaps it might work for you. So pardon me on that blanket statement. I also stated that I found the main root conspiracy to be about getting us to go through someone else's door when this being would have never wanted that from anyone. Not from what I understand, anyway. To me, it was as though someone had hijacked some kind of actual instruction manual that was left here for us by multiple people and completely polarized it and got us to focus on one end or the other, just as long as we never put the two together. Why? Because as long as we're not operating on 2 polarities, then we're not connected to nature and organic life, and we can be completely manipulated and messed with, mentally, psychologically, emotionally, you name it, wide open for manipulation, malleable. Also, have a look at, to Jesus' right, there is what appears to be a woman. And there's a V being made by both of their arms, and she's wearing orange and he's wearing red. And see how the fusion of their 2 arms, where they meet, is at the pillar between the feminine seat and the door, right? Okay, remember that. I'll go over it again, but for later. And then I told you that I remembered my agreement before I came into this planet, which I'll be defining officially very shortly here. I also stated that these creations of mine were protected by a very powerful earthbound magic spell. Magic with a K, I said. Well, the real magic here is just the natural law, and that's magic with a C. That was my first magic spell with a K ever. One way to explain the difference between magic with a C and magic with a K is magic with a C adds up to 33, and magic with a K adds up to 44. In terms of frequencies, 33 lines up with C note area, and 44 lines up with the mid area of the body. Depending on which tuning it is, it's either just above the center mark or just below. And, of course, it's the 44. All my magic spell with a K was simply a certain sized rod, a certain height of a certain increment of measurement. And it was 43 of those increments and a certain amount of increments below the ground, and it was a certain diameter. And all it was a gray magic spell to simply say hello to fellow magicians and, hey, if you wouldn't mind, just leave this alone. I respect you. I'll see you guys. Thank you for everything that you've taught me. And that's it with the magic spell with a K. Now I'm going to define what my agreement was, what was all entailed with my whole agreement, and then who my agreement was to and with. I was to show you the Divine Father, which is 13 hertz, and the Divine Mother, which is 33 hertz, or this is one form of each of them. 13 hertz is associated with a G or A note, which is the throat or third eye area. 33 hertz is a C note associated with a root or grail, and it's associated with the double toroidal. And I was to point out the difference of 13 and 33, which was 20, which was what I like to call a fifth. And then on this symbol here, if you see between the two double gold circles, there's 20 double green lines. So it's literally showing you the 20 there, and this is a middle symbol. This is a double toroidal of two polarities. So that means that 53 must also be involved. So instead of going with 53 though, I actually went with 106, and while I was up there, compared them to these popular A notes that are found at monolithic sites that come out to 108 hertz for 432, 110 for 440, 111 for 444, and 112 for 448 hertz. Let's look at those now again. 112, 111, 110, 108, and then 106. And watch and listen for the different resonances.
112 hertz imaged on simoscope, gradually increasing amplitude. End of take. 111 hertz imaged on simoscope, gradually increasing amplitude. End of take. 110 hertz imaged on simoscope, gradually increasing amplitude. Increasing amplitude a little further. Now decreasing amplitude. End of take. 108 hertz imaged on simoscope, gradually increasing amplitude. End of take. 106 Hz imaged on CymaScope, gradually increasing amplitude.
So 110 Hertz was really good, really free-flowing, had quite the background sound to it. Yet I like this one the best, but not to say one's better than the other. It's just this one has some interesting features. It has quite a little jingle to it, and it's got the bullseye crosshairs through it.
End of take.
And then I was to show you 33 doubled, which is just the next C2 note of 444 Hz tuning. And it's 66 Hz. And then I was to show you 66 Hz's correlation with human DNA. And here is a supposed digital printout, cross-section of human DNA on the left, 66 Hz on the right, and 66 Hz is a doubling of 33 Hz, 33 Hz being a double toroidal, which is supposedly pseudoscience and doesn't exist. And here's DNA in its next octave. And as I had stated earlier, I was to rebring awareness, an introduction back to the 8th chakra, which some call the Soma chakra, some cultures I feel also call it the 8th ancestor. And in terms of 8th personified chakra here, I'm talking about the purplish blue, long-haired being behind the second one from the bottom on the right. And here it is here, a little more of a close-up. Notice how there's red at the bottom left and red behind this pair of yellow and purple and blue. And back to the full view. Take note of how the entire background is blue. For later. And then I was to go over an introduction of the basics in terms of embodiment and different seats available to live from. So we're going to go into it in this video in great detail. I'll just touch on it again. 2 main seats, the grail or pelvic floor, root chakra, or head, third eye, pineal gland, and the fusion point of the two, right there. I also mentioned how I found the heart is not a seat, yet it is a connection point of both yin and yang through that very double torsion field that I've been talking about, which I'll get into in much more detail. Yet when we live from the head, we can live from there, but it's not ideal, that's for sure. When we live from here, the entire body is flooded with yin. Yin always tries to get to ether. And so we're continuously experiencing this upward influx of yin, which is causing all kinds of positive ion buildup in the upper half, especially the head area. If we live from the grail, or the pelvic floor, we literally bring in yang, we bring in light, and this is the way that we were intended or designed to run, was to live from here. Yang always seeks to get to ground. So when we move our awareness to ground in us, then yang is going to come to it. It's just the way it works. It's not a theory, it's natural law. I had also touched on, in our body, our actual yang line runs down the back, and yang travels in the yang line, which is always seeking to get to ground. And in the front is our yin line, and yin always travels in the yin line, and it's attempting to get to ether. So it's always naturally trying to come up every moment of the day, and we have many, many aspects to this world, which we'll be talking about, which is causing our fight or flight system to be triggered continuously, which is causing yang to come up the back. And it's deadheading with the yin at the crown, and it's pouring out the crown. This is not a good scenario for being present and being able to see and feel what's going on around you. I had also talked about, okay, so there's our 3 points, the Trinity, the Father, the Son or the Daughter, and the Holy Ghost, which is the Mother and has been intentionally removed. Although it's of 3 brains, or 3 centers, it's of 4 points with the double toroidal, and that's how we run. We do not run as if we're one magnet just in the center, which is often shown all over social media and the World Wide Web. Coming down into here, I showed that the yin seat sends yin energy up to the first yang seat, and then to the second yang seat. The yang seat sends its yang energy down to the first yin seat, and then down to the second yin seat. I also just made a little note of that here are your 3 primary colors, red, yellow, blue, and nature affixes red and yellow in your lower half. So where is the extra awareness naturally? It is in the lower half. There's more on this too. We'll be discussing this in great detail. We'll also be discussing how in ancient times the head was referred to as the 666. This was referred to as the 888, and the fusion point in the center was referred to as the 777. And then I'd gone over all these A49 note tunings. And if we start here, the 444 hertz directly correlates with ether, which is our magnetic field, which runs between 33 and 66 microteslas. 442 resonates with the crown chakra. 440 resonates with third eye chakra. 438 resonates with the throat chakra. 436 resonates with the heart chakra. 432 resonates with the soma chakra. 430 resonates with the solar plexus chakra. 428 resonates with the sacral chakra. 426 resonates with the root. And 424 is the frequency of the earth, which also must be very close to the frequency of the sun as well, for they are of the same. Also, 434 is the true middle point, the 0 point. I had also put on here that 448, a known occult tuning that is used for doing something outside of the magnetic field, either sending energy out or bringing something in. It can be worked with or used for many things. 444 can often be manipulated and used to fracture holes in our magnetic field of the earth and even us. I'll be talking about that more later on. And just to sum all that up, it's just to show what each tuning is most affixed to on the next tier beyond individual notes, because each one of these chakras correlates with a certain note as well. And from here to there is like 1 octave. And take note how 444 is exactly 20 from 424. A difference of 20 hertz, just like the 13 and 33. And there's a whole bunch of other correlations with that spread of 20 that we'll be going over. And then finally, in terms of embodiment practices and the king's chair and the queen's chair and the fusion point of the 2 in the middle, I was to give an introduction to the Ark of the Covenant, which is, the first Ark of the Covenant is right there. It's a tiny little gap. The second Ark of the Covenant is right there in the mouth where the Ren and Du, or the yin and yang line, don't connect. They also don't naturally connect down here. When we take our awareness out of our head and place it back here, we are literally refusing the first arc. And then if we stick the tongue to the roof of our mouth, we're completing the second arc. And if we learn the practices to get this flowing the right way, with yang coming in and going down the yang line rather than having yin energy coming up this line, that is just like starting a vehicle with a crank, like this.
Filme litt, ja.
And then once we get that going, it will fire. This is just like DC, going up the front, down the back, and it will start to fire once all this is cleaned out and all our shadow work has attained a certain point. It will fire like AC, and it will come down the center, which will be the third arc right in the center here between the -1 and the +1. And it will form a little magnetic field apple in the center, and then a bigger one around. And then what is the fourth and final or single full arc? The fourth and final single full arc is the human microcosm as a whole. Arc of the covenant means arc of the relationship, and that relationship is the relationship of yin and yang and you. My agreement also involved unveiling a 14-note tuning that replaced the B sharp and the E sharp that have been removed. And so we now have 4 points of reference in one octave. And this tuning here, this 14-note tuning, C43 equals 252.15, is essentially A49 equals 424, just it's simply that this tuning is taken from the C of that 424, and 14 notes are deciphered from there. And here's the 12-note tuning, A49 equals 440. We'll be working with 440 as an example. And it shows the B sharp and the E sharp that have been removed. Funny how that E sharp area is the soma chakra and correlates with 432, yet they took out the E sharp note on the lesser tier. So we're told 432 is a great overall tuning, but they've actually taken the note out of every octave of that tuning. And then finally, as per my agreement, I showed you a picture of St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City, and I told you that it was 448 feet tall, if not 448.1 feet tall. And then I showed you a picture of the keyhole that's at the other end of this single structure. And then I said, I, Scott Prier of Earth, removed the symbol that I placed there. And I played you a frequency. And here it is again.
33.3 Hertz imaged on CymaScope, gradually increasing amplitude. End of take.
And here they are together. Keyhole on top, 33.3 Hertz, the first audible C1 note of 448 Hertz tuning. And it is a match, except the keyhole doesn't have the lotus petals in it, which is the feminine aspect of the symbol. This proves that John's machine at CymaScope is bang on, and also proves that the speed of sound should be taken from 23 degrees, which it is at the equatorial belt each morning. And that brings the speed of sound to 345 meters per second. If we were to go with 343, like they have everyone focused on with 20 degrees, then it would come out to 33.11. And that is definitely not this symbol, because I have that symbol. We're going to be looking at that shortly. The symbol on the left here is a Buddhist mandala, which is also a match. And we're going to be looking later on at how this symbol is kind of all over the world. So why did I say I removed the symbol that I placed there? Well, I'll get into the I part in a little bit, but that symbol, or that frequency, this has been turned into an energy harvesting device, which is sucking yin energy off this planet through polarized humans. I'm going to show you very soon just exactly how that's being done. It's actually quite simple. Before we get into the Vatican, though, as well as London, D.C. and Washington, D.C., let's start with Nolan's Cross on Oak Island. So here is a depiction of Nolan's Cross on Oak Island, which is in Nova Scotia, otherwise known as New Scotland. So we have this section here, this stone to this stone. These are all the stones that have been placed. This is a polarized cross. This stone was sunk beneath the ground. From this stone to this countersunk stone is 145 feet. From this stone to this stone is 429 feet, and from this stone to this stone is 293 feet, for a grand total of 867 feet from end to end, stone to stone. Across, we have 720, right here. Take note that I have also converted these feet to meters. 145 feet is 44.2 meters, rounded off. 429 feet is 130.75 meters. And 293 feet is 89.3064 meters. Now let's have a look at what is frequency and what is wavelength and what is a wave number. So just a basic comparison of a low frequency and a slightly higher frequency. Okay, so these two black lines here depict 1 second in between. Hertz equals cycles per second. Wavelength equals the length between crests on a transverse wave, not a longitudinal wave. Longitudinal waves is something that we will talk about much later. But as for this, 2 hertz, so that's 2 hertz, 2 cycles per second, has a wavelength of 172.5 meters. 12 hertz, 12 cycles per second, has a wavelength of 28.75 meters. So the lower the frequency, the higher or longer the wavelength. The higher the frequency, the lower or shorter the wavelength. And this is all just basic stuff that each individual will have to look at for themselves and try to get a grip on in their own way. And now we're going to begin our little apocalypse, our unveiling. So, taking note here, I've taken 145 feet, which is 44.2 meters rounded off, and switched it or converted it to hertz. And it's 7.8 hertz, same as the frequency of the planet. The Earth's heartbeat is 7.83 hertz on average. This section, 429 feet, or 130.75 meters, converts to 2.64 hertz. Funny thing, 528 hertz is known for healing human DNA. Half of 528 is 264. Oh, but that's not the same, right? That's 2.64 hertz. Yeah, we'll talk about what's been removed from our mathematics so that we don't figure this out. We'll be talking about that shortly as well. 293 feet is 89.3064 meters, which comes out to 3.86 hertz. And while we're at it, let's convert 720 feet, the crossways, to 219.46 meters, which comes out to 1.57 hertz. So the total of all of these, this one and this point, and then this point to that point, and then that point to that point, comes out to 15.87 hertz. Okay? And then this one, which is 1.57, so the left-right, the latitudinal is 1.57, and the overall longitudinal is 1.31 hertz, because that's what 867 feet, the entire length of this, comes out to. Oh, geez, look, it also comes out to 264.2616 meters, which comes out to 1.31 hertz. This number. We will be talking about this in great detail throughout the entire video. The point I'm getting at, the crossways is 1.57 hertz. The lengthwise way overall is 1.31 hertz. 1.57 minus 1.31 hertz gives a difference of 0.26 hertz. So, yes, I've showed you measurements and wavelengths and hertz, and so what, right? Well, the point is, this is a polarized cross, okay? This cross was placed to kick off the second experiment, which was, from my memory, to live from the head polarity for 900 years, which would take us to 1120 AD or so. Something I want to point out right now is that this cross is just one of many little creations on Oak Island, and that this cross is exactly 1,118 feet away from a triangle that is also made out of stone. I'll be talking about that in a different video. This is all that's important right now. But right now, what we have is the earth is being honored, so is the ether. The head is being honored, or the third eye, the head brain, with its cross, but there is no root being honored, and there is no heart fusion being honored. Therefore, this is to extract yin energy off this planet. And that's not evil. It's just what we have done, from my memory, as a catalyst to expand consciousness, which I'll be explaining in much more detail. Let's go back and have a quick look at 13 hertz again. Remember how I said it was 3 crosses in one? So here is that 13 hertz shot in oil, and it's forming those 3 crosses. One through the center, one where the head would be, and one where the grail or pelvic floor would be. Also worth mentioning on this polarized cross is that although the earth is honored, there is no root honored, yet there is a sacral and solar plexus chakra area honored. This will be very beneficial for understanding the psyop that is Q, or the number 17 that's currently going on in our world right now. So what I've done is I've taken 145 that was moved in to honor the crown, and I have put this 145 in there to honor the root within. Now that I have this and this, all I have to do is figure out that total length and divide by 2 to find my center point. So 145 plus 145 is 290, 867 overall, minus 290 is 577 in between. If I divide that directly in half, I get 288.5. So I'm going to mark that on there now. So this was 577 from here, crown, to root point. We divided that in half, which was 288.5. And that's where that line is right there. But overall, out of 867, that puts that line at 433.5. 0.5 below 434, which we're going to get into right away. And so to get the width of this one, all I do is divide 8 by 6, which gives me 1.333, and I times this 720 by 1.333, and I get 959 for its width. And then when I times this 1.333 by 960, I get just under 1280, and that's this one. So there, I've added the full width in to the root connection at 1280 feet. And I added another 145 in here from the earth down into the earth, giving the 290 here. Let's have a look at 12.80 hertz, just for kicks right now.
12.8 hertz imaged on CymaScope, gradually increasing amplitude. End of take.
Okay, and so all I did here was add another 1280, and then 960, and then 720 with this extra 145. And this right here, this is a grounding symbol that you will find on all architecture and P&ID blueprints. That symbol right there from the dot down. So all I did was ground this out to 2 polarities, and then there was the excess of 3 feet. So this now makes 290 right here, and the 3 feet goes to the center mark, to the -1 and +1, which we talked about in the other videos, but I'll be going over thoroughly in a bit. That puts the oscillation point 1.5 feet above and 1.5 feet under the midline of 433.5, which makes each half from these midlines exactly 432. From there to there is 432, and from there to there is 432, meaning that there's a 3-foot little window right here. First, I want to talk about the ground. Some people like to go with 5 for their ground symbol. I'm choosing 3 for now because it works out very well with this whole picture, and it acknowledges 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 3 and 3. Notice the spread of the upper ones, and notice the spread of the lower ones. Tighter, more of a spread here. And let's have a look at some of these numbers to do with this stuff and the 432 from there to there and there to there. And here's these numbers we just talked about. The 432 feet from the feminine side up to the middle, and the 432 feet from the masculine side down to the middle. And they convert to 2.62 hertz. A wavelength of 432 feet is 2.62 hertz. And then there again, another 2.62 hertz. The total is 864, which comes out to 1.31 hertz. Now let's talk about this little window. The window is 3 feet. The wave number for a 3-foot wavelength is 0.333. 1.5 feet, a 1.5-foot wavelength, has a wave number of 0.666. Here's the frequencies for 3 feet and 1.5 feet. And then just a little note here on the 1.5 foot. It comes out to 0.4572 meters, which adds up to an 18 in numerology. And the 3 foot comes out to 0.9144 meters, which is also an 18 in numerology. And that little 3-foot window on either side of the center line at 433.5, so that's 1.5 feet on either side of the center line, which is also 18 inches. Well, I don't know how to tell you this. I've been just dreading this. I actually intentionally have not gone over that cross my entire life until today, because I knew that I was present when it was built. And there was some intense feelings and emotions to it, and I decided to look at all other ones and to leave this one till the last, till today. You know what else I remember? That there's something in that 3-foot little window there in the center. And there may even be a stone that's countersunk where the actual feminine seat is, which I measured 145 feet up from the most bottom rock and put a mark there. I'm just going to take a little moment to give a friendly reminder that whatever is there is for all of the world. I do hope you share what's there. But even if you don't, it doesn't matter, because that's not the true treasure. The true treasure is simply knowledge, which I'm going to share with you right now and continue to share with you as long as I live. A little more on Nolan's Cross. Let's look at another plane, the height. The stones are said to be around 9 feet high, all of them. I can't find anything solid on that in terms of information. Yet I'm going to say they're all between 8.2 and 9 feet. Why? Because the middle point of 8.2 and 9 feet is 8.6 feet, which is 131.615 hertz. And what most don't realize, vast majority, is that what I've just shared with you here in between the Nolan's Cross drawing and these two pictures here is the basis of regeneration. Come out of the head and back into the body so that you get your other two spiritual eyes, and you will know thyself, and you will know exactly how to put this all together. Vatican City. Let's go to Vatican City. What was it with Vatican City? Why did I say that I removed a symbol that I placed there? Well, I had told you in part 1 and part 2 that this man wearing a dog mask that I would meet on top of a pyramid with most nights, I traced him back to a potential ancestor. I said that I had found that the Mackays traced back to an older Pictish clan, which was the Mackeys, and that all of the Mackays were actually sons and daughters of this E, his name was, and that he was the lord of the underworld. And then there's this correlation on a stepped pyramid with a man wearing a dog mask who's Caucasian, who's wearing a tunic and some type of leatherish kilt. And so I found these connections, but that's all I shared with you. Those were the lightest connections. The next heaviest connection was in that story entitled The Children of King Lear. The stepmother in the story had cursed the 4 children to live as swans on one particular lake for 300 years and another particular lake for 300 years, and then the open seas for 300 years. You know, when I read that, I saw like a downward pointing triangle, which was kind of connected to all because of the open seas, but no matter whether I said it to myself in my head or whether I wrote it out, what I would always see in my mind's eye was 33.3 for 900 years. And I found that 3 years ago, and I had no idea what it meant until the last month and a half. I shouldn't say I didn't have an idea. I knew it had to do with something with frequency, but I didn't know where. The next part to that story was how when a storm came, the 3 brothers would go to the sister for shelter, the feminine body. And how she would shelter them was one brother under each wing and then another brother under her breast and kind of her stomach area. So 3 masculine bodies, let's say white bodies, on the lower half of one all-encompassing black yin female body. And they were preparing for a storm. I have memories that we all got together, every single one of us that were of this planet at the time. There are many here visiting that have come for learning. But that we all got together and we made an agreement to switch our Tartarian system to a system that would literally suck us up into our own head so that we could swim around up in the head and learn what it is to be polarized. And then at some point, we could come back down and catch the contrast of that experience and be able to look from the other seat, the lower seat, and see the difference between the two. Why? Well, there's a lot on that why. Let's have a look at Vatican City first, okay? I want to explain to you what's going on there. Okay, guys, so here's a picture of Vatican City. Here it is looking straight down on it. So an overview or plan view, and here is a side view of it. And now, I already talked about this, but once again, our magnetic field works from 33 to 66 microteslas. Okay? Now, although our current science doesn't honor a direct relationship between microtesla and hertz, I assure you there is one. So what we did discuss was down here. This is 33.3 hertz, which is a match to the cymoglyph that I showed you. And I said that I removed that. Why? Because 33.3 hertz, the musical note that correlates with the pelvic floor, it puts it just into the magnetic field, which means that there's no possible way it has a ground connection. So what is 33.3 hertz doubled? Well, it's 66.6 hertz. Let's have a look at 66.6 hertz.
66.6 hertz imaged on cymoscope, gradually increasing amplitude. Increasing amplitude a little further. Now decreasing amplitude. End of take.
I find it interesting how 66.6 hertz is tenfold geometry, and so is human DNA at 66 hertz, which is our magnetic field's edge. It's almost as though the 66.6 hertz has funnels to attach to the funnels of 66 hertz. It's like they would fit right into each other. Look around the edge of 66 hertz, which is the one on the right. And as I said earlier, though, no number is evil. It's all how it's being utilized or worked with or used. What's my main point here? Well, my main point is that the tower is 448 feet, which is tied to a C note of 448 hertz tuning. Yet 448 feet is tuned to 252.6 something in terms of hertz, which is a C note, and it's a C note that's in line with the proper tuning I shared with you, yet it's mixed with an A49 448. This is pure sorcery. This is a yin energy harvesting system. And how they're doing that is getting everyone to be scared of the 666, which is actually just one being's way of teaching internal alchemy. The 666 is the head seat, which is the underworld. The 888 is the pelvic floor seat, which is life. The fusion of the two is the 777. So this 66.6 hertz is being utilized to literally draw upon the head where they have everyone situated, because that's what the second experiment was about, was sorcerizing everybody's awareness to their head seat, which causes an influx of yin throughout the whole body, up and out the crown, through the magnetic field, and to something. On top of all this, the OD of St. Peter's Basilica is 138 feet, and the ID is 136 feet, which means it's embracing 137. What is 448.1 feet? It's 136.57 meters. The nave height is 46.2 meters, or 151.57 feet. The width of it is 150 meters, or 490 feet. So there's that 49 again, there's a 15, and there's a double 15 right there. So Vatican City is a main hub yin energy extractor. Why is it a main hub? Well, because everybody that is agreeing to be a part of a non-living corporation has literally signed their soul over to this establishment, this corporation. Have you ever heard of the experiments of how they took people's DNA and drove 300 miles away, 400 miles away, 500 miles away, and they actually were able to do things to their DNA and still affect the person hundreds of miles away? Well, it's not much different with this. If you've signed your soul over to a corporation for the corporation to decide things for you, to have rule over you, then all your energy is connected through the grid lines, through the ley lines of this man-made system of buildings, and it's all connected back to here. Yet here's the catch. Guess what? They can all be changed quite easily. The heights of the towers can be changed, and symbols on such energy extractors as this that have a C symbol at the base. Churches are the same, by the way. You always see the back of the church, and then the steeple in the front. Well, the back of the church is to a certain height as well. That's the yin seat. The steeple is the masculine seat. It's interesting to note that the yin seat is not on the ground, though, is it? It's the lowest height of the roof. That's not much different than doing this and putting a root note into the ether, or keeping a root note above the ground. So now picture a bunch of people walking into a church, and the church plays 432, 440, or 444, or 448, all which will basically extract yin energy out of them because they don't have a root connection. Allow me to clarify a little more on what I mean by people going into a church and being extracted of yin energy. You're going into an external vessel to worship some external figure. This worship is in the form of prayer while simultaneously playing songs that are aligned with this figure of worship. I'll just say this. These churches are external creations designed to get you to give your energy away. The original vessel is not a church, it's your body. Big G God is yin and yang. Yin and yang do not require energy from you. Whatever it is that you're giving your energy away to is not Big G God, for it is the human being that is the conductor of Big G God, which is yin and yang. And yet all of these churches can be changed around as well. The heights of the towers or the steeple can be changed. The choice of music and tuning can be changed. And they can be worked with, these external vessels, as assistants, as long as a ground connection has already been attained within the human being. So who was my agreement with? Well, I'm under contract with every single creature on this planet, whether they are polarized or not polarized, living or non-living. The deal was to come back here and end the second experiment, tell you how to end the second experiment, so that you may kick off the third experiment and prepare for an event that is to happen in Earth's near future. This event is why we did what we did for the last 900 years. This is all from my memory. This is not a belief, this is what I know. And so I'm just going to stand here and I'm going to go through with it, because this isn't something I've concocted up in my mind. My entire life has revolved around this, and as many times as I have tried to refute it, I cannot. And it came right down to December 18th, and I had a choice whether I was going to keep that agreement or not. And I figured, even though it was going to seem very egotistical and arrogant and whatever else, I better just go ahead and do it to be on the safe side. Who gives a shit if someone thinks I'm arrogant or have an ego issue? because I'm dropping a bunch of information that they don't even understand. Myself and many others, from my memory, went around and literally gave you all your religions. We went around from place to place to place. When we got to a place, we would bedazzle you with a bunch of stuff that you couldn't do. And then we would start building temples. And while we were building temples and all kinds of structures, we would get to know you. We would get to know your medicine men and medicine women. And then as soon as the pyramids were complete, or the structure was complete, we only told your head shaman, not even your political figures. And we intentionally moved you up to your head. We sorcerized you. One of these sorcery spells was the sorcery spell that is the sword in the stone. The sword was pulled from the stone 900 years ago. That's yang being pulled from the yin. So that entire story is literally a psyop to keep people stuck in their head. What needs to happen is the sword needs to be replaced in the stone. The yang, or divine father, needs to be replaced in the divine mother, which is the vessel. But the divine mother needs to go to her original seat in order for that to happen. It's as though the whole body is a vessel or a cup. And currently, from the sorcery, this cup is continuously filling from the bottom and overflowing. And yin travels up and yang travels down. So if all energy is coming up and out of the crown, there's nowhere for yang to go. The main awareness needs to be moved from the head back down to here. So the cup then has room for yang to enter. So why did we have to have the temple built before we did that? Because you're all incredibly powerful. And moving your awareness up into your head can literally push solar systems apart. I'm not kidding. At the same time, the temple is actually separating you from the ocean that is space. So it's separating this energy that contains spirit from you in that sense as well. Okay, so it's a twofold thing. There's so much going on with these pyramids. But at the same time, they're also fair. If we live from the head, the pyramids are literally going to pull up on us. If we live from the grail, the pyramids are literally going to flood light in on us. If we live from the center, you've then matched the planet's heartbeat, and the pyramids don't affect you. And energy is not being churned or manipulated within you whatsoever. They're like a default system. And they create a standing EMP of basically 8 hertz. They're the baseline system. All the buildings that are currently built today can all be added to this system, and this system can be amplified. But right now, all these buildings are poking little holes in the default system, which is causing energy to come up and out those holes. And while all this energy is being sucked out, it's literally assisting in sucking our awareness to our head and holding us there for the purposes of learning. To learn what it is like to be powerless. To learn how, through polarization, everything you do is just going to cause more polarization for most. And at the same time, it's a massive catalyst for the expansion of consciousness and how a certain species or group of beings works. Let's just have a look at the Great Pyramid in the simplest sense, just basic math. Angles equals pitch equals frequency. Let's have a look. So here, most people don't realize that the Great Pyramid, if we're looking directly down on it from as if we're up above it, looking straight over the center. It actually has two sets of angles in it. It's kind of like a star or a cross. It's based on 8 as well, 8 angles. 4 are 51.84, and the other 4 angles are 42 degrees. 51.84 divided by 60, because that's what it's based on, 60 degrees, is 0.864. Can't tell me that's an accident. 42 degrees divided by 60 is 0.7. What's the middle point of these two? It's 0.782. What's the heartbeat of the Earth that they have you focused on? 7.83, right? Yeah, well, that's basically the same thing, just less. And there's all types of tricks with this, whether you're working with natural law. The right side of the decimal can be one thing and the left side of the decimal can be another. But magic with a K, oh, you can do all kinds of stuff with this. You can put numbers in reverse, you can mix and match them on either side, and yes, they have an effect. The other thing about all these pyramids is that most of them are connected to stars as well, which are anchoring the light here. And so all this group of beings did was, while we were all going to be playing around in the head, they put mock heads or mock crowns onto the Earth, just like our crown energy is supposed to be on our pelvic floor. So these were to hold the planet together while we were to come up inside our heads. Why? Because it would literally tear the planet apart if these weren't there. And this is another way to explain what they did with the pyramids. All they did was put a representative of our upper half onto the Earth to hold everything together while we came apart. This is also close to a very well-known symbol associated with Easter Island. This is another symbol that I never draw. Just like I didn't want to look at Nolan's cross, every time I draw this, I get sick, nauseous. So for the purposes of teaching the knowledge of good and evil, or life and polarization, we will be removing black and white from here on out and using red in place of black or yin and indigo in place of white or yang. So as we discussed, let's just go over this one more time. Where they have majority of us right now is here, and what it's causing is an influx of yin, which is, as you know it, darkness from the black or white theory. And it's just causing no connection with the body to the brain. And if we're going to live from here, this is the only brain you get. Why? Well, we already discussed this. Let me just say it one more time. Are you standing on the sun? No. Well, that's yang. We are standing on the Earth, and there is an electrical, universal, organic, original blueprint circuit going on here that gives all life life. So if you can't stand on the sun, and you can't connect directly, physically to the sun, then you must have to get in on the other polarity of that two-polarity circuit. So we're going to have to connect with our planet. And the only way to properly do that is to connect with our lower half, which is what's been called the devil and the pits of Hades and everything else, simply for the second experiment to keep you away from here. Why? Because the more polarized shit we learn up here and then bring back down to here and look at it from this seat, the more our consciousness will expand. The other great thing about living from here is this is how you were designed to run. So you don't only get this belly brain of 400,000 neurons, roughly. You get the heart brain as the yang is coming by at 40,000 neurons, roughly. And you get the head brain at roughly 4 billion neurons as the yang is coming in. And this becomes a proper and true crowned connection that is now taking in rather than pouring out. The most important phase of everything that I'm telling you here today is simply about learning, not worrying about direction in front or back or any of that stuff. The first starting phase is to simply learn, find an embodiment coach and learn how to get one's awareness out of here and down into here and awaken this vagus nerve and awaken all of this, all your memories, all your ancestral learnings. Everything is stored in here. And so that first step is simply descending into the body just in general, however you best can, from head to grail. And remember that visualization has been a big thing these last couple decades, but it's more about feeling. Literally feeling rather than watching from the head. And literally learning how to take that awareness and feel it millimeter by millimeter all the way down. And if when you're going down it stops, to just sit there with it and allow it to melt whatever it is that stopped it. And we'll continue to go over this periodically throughout the rest of the video. Now let's talk about the Illuminati eye. So what is the Illuminati eye symbol all about? The single eye is always found in a 2D pyramid, and a triangle can always only add up to a maximum of 180 degrees, and that's a half. But later on we'll be talking about how a whole is actually based on 720 and multiples thereof, which means that 180 would be more like 25% or a quarter. In the Illuminati eye, we'll cover one side or the other. I've tried to see if it's one side more than the other, and it seems to depend on the month. There's also a lot of this, the old dog symbol on both eyes. All kinds of stuff like this going on. In the most basic sense, the Illuminati eye is just about keeping you on a half. Don't give a shit which one it is, just as long as you never put both together. And the symbology of that eye, it has a direct effect on polarized people. Speaking from my own experience here. By the way, just so you're aware, I'm not completely unpolarized, okay? I become polarized all the time. The difference is that I catch it in a matter of minutes now, as opposed to hours or days or never, like early in life. So let's just look at the eye, the particular eye that this magic spell with a K is all about. Okay? This is the eye that they want to keep you on. Now we're going to be looking at multiple eyes like this. But this eye, without the other eye, is a minus symbol. It also causes energy extraction from your environment and out the crown if no root connection is present. This is the eye that they want to keep you on, and they put the eye in a triangle as a pyramid because they're literally trying to send all this polarized energy over to the pyramid to mess with it. That's what I have discovered. I used to think the pyramids were the most evil thing ever and that they were the energy extractors. Not so in recent years. Same thing with this. It's the same thing. If I keep you on this eye without having the other eye, then yin energy is going to flow through you and out the top because no anchor is present. I apologize if that's annoying, but I'm probably going to say that in another 20 different ways by the time this video is over. So this eye is the eye that needs to happen first. And when that line in the Bible is stated that says, "If thine eye be single, then thy whole body will be full of light," that is this eye. The third eye that they're getting you to focus on is nothing more than a psyop to encourage polarization. Yes, the pineal gland is half of it, but the pineal gland is a recipe for insanity without an anchor. This is the third eye. This eye symbolizes top and bottom connection as well as left and right. So up and down, left and right. And this is the fourth eye, front and back, yin and yang. This is when you get into figuring out your front and back line after you've just worked on dropping down into the body in general. You then fine-tune it with getting this energy to come down the back and up the front, and then they fire into the middle, and this is the third and fourth eye that can only come from a crown and grail connection. Once this is achieved, welcome to 4D, the true 4D. You do not just get to 4D from 2D or 1.5D where most people are. 4D is an extension of 3D. It's a continuation. Therefore, we must fully anchor in 3D to get to 4D. And once you get that top and bottom connection, you then get the other two circles that come in, and there's your top and bottom, and there's your sides coming in there. This one's kind of a little secret for later. Notice how this one isn't at the root, it's at the throat and basically the sacral chakra area. We'll get into that later. And so let's have a look at this Vesica Pisces symbol and compare it after what we just talked about. And I had stated that we need to get this one first that has an anchor rather than this one. So, what has Christianity done with this symbol? That's all they've done, and leave a tail there for a fish. But they gave you not this one, they give you this one, the minus symbol. Establishing this one first gets you this one with this one, which is all three brains and a double torsion field. But we got to go through all that fear stuff so that we can get to base truly. And then when we experience fear, we don't run from it or anything like that. We simply allow it to happen. And it triggers our actual defense system, which is energy coming up the front. And no, I'm not talking like the statue of Baphomet or Baal. I will go over that statue eventually and show you how 90% of it is actually spot on. You'll love it when we go over that one. Anyways, onward we go. Let's go over yin and yang again, slightly different way. Yin energy, earth energy, always trying to get to ether. Yang energy, ether energy, always trying to get to earth. Red, circle, indigo, cross, gets you green in the center, sword in the stone. Yin is feminine energy. Yang is masculine energy. Yin, circle. Yang, square. Yin, negative charge. Yang, positive charge. Feminine, multiply, the X. The bands that are through the cross through the center there, right? So that applies to the other part of the positive sign. Yet division, which is kind of a sign of balance, if you look at it, it's a pretty balanced symbol, isn't it? The divide symbol is yang. Greater than, feminine. Less than, masculine. Feminine, 45-degree triangle. Masculine, 60-degree triangle. And so for these numbers, just numbers in general, they can be both. It depends on whether they're static or dynamic, which I'll go over right away. Okay, but 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 can be both yin and yang, depending on which end you're looking from, and vice versa. Yin, even numbers, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. Yang, odd numbers, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Yin is left, the back, and the bottom. We're talking body sections. I had a hard time with this back one. Many embodiment teachers or coaches and others have taught me that the back truly is the feminine part of the body, which the spine or the masculine part runs through. This kind of reminds me of, all those old paintings in that you see of the feminine back, or the woman just slightly dropping whatever she's wearing just past her shoulder a little bit so that you can see the shoulder blade. I would have always thought that the front would have been the feminine because of pregnancy and breasts and stuff like that, and that's a major part of the feminine. Yang is the right side of the body. Front, which the feminine yin line runs through, and the top half of the body. Yet the yin side is the right brain, and the yang side is the left brain. They cross within the head. angles. These are important. Yin angles, 22.5 degrees, 45 degrees, 90 degrees. The rise equals the run with 45s. That's the big one, the 45 and the 60. The yang angles, 15 degrees, 30 degrees, 6 degrees. And take note that 15 and 30 make 45. 90 can be made between 30 and 60, and this is one of the factors involved on how we can literally switch around these buildings to strengthen the actual magnetic field and contribute. And then next, another very important part is 8 extraordinary vessels, 12 meridians. Okay, although there's yin and yang and meridians, on this tier the vessels are feminine, the meridians are yang. You see, this is one of the major parts of the sorcery to get you to come up into the head. So when it's time to raise you up off the pelvic floor or put you up into the head seat, we get you to focus on a whole of 14 being 12 meridians, so 6 yin, 6 yang, and then just 2 of the extraordinary vessels, which is the main yang line and main yin line. So that gets you to focus on everything up and just the masculine side, when really the 14 is actually about 8 vessels and 6 pairs of meridians. The 6 pairs are no longer 12 because they're just one meridian of yin and yang. So we get to come back down, we focus on putting 6 pairs into 8 vessels rather than focus on just meridians and the main yin and main yang line, which are way overbalanced on the masculine side. The big thing with that less than and greater than sign is remember that the wider part of the open triangle always eats the bigger number. No, this is natural law. The tip of the pyramid could not exist without the base. Don't forget about that when you're dealing with government. So more on the yin and yang, static and dynamic. If we see here, the indigo is on top, the red is on the bottom. That is static, and it depends on which seat you're looking from. Remember I said 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, it depends on which seat you're looking from. This can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 if you're looking from here. And then here, down here, we have dynamic with the indigo on the bottom, meaning crown energy is going to the grail, and with the red on the top, meaning earth energy is going to the crown seat. And this is what I meant by preparing for the storm in the story that was entitled The Children of King Lear. The indigo, masculine, is on the bottom side of the feminine body, or the sister, which means that it is dynamic and flowing, which gives you this, making crown and grail connection, which gives you this eye, which gives you the 2 of these together, which is the double toroidal, which is dynamic flow, which is how we prepare for the storm. Okay, let's start on the symbology. On the masculine side, 2 triangles is often depicted as a balanced symbol, masculine and feminine. Well, we're going to be having a look at that. The maximum that these 2 make is 360 degrees, whereas the feminine is often represented with 2 circles, the Star of David, or the 2 60-degree triangles put together. We're told that that's a balanced symbol, masculine and feminine, yet there are no curves or no swales. There is no feminine presence here in this symbol. You can make this symbol this way, or you can make it this way. What's really funny is if you put the 2 together, you get 12 around 1. All masculine, of course. And then over to this, and this is what the dog man was first showing me. He'd show me the 2 in the center this way, side by side, and then the 2 in the center, top and bottom. And all he was getting at was, if you start your Vesica Pisces this way, your seat of life comes out like this. If you start it this way, your seat of life comes out like this. Either one is not balanced though. And if you put the 2 together, this is what you get right here, which is like looking down on top of a toroidal. That is, if this is present in here. So you would have 12 around 1, 12 around 1, masculine and feminine. If you put them together, you get this. 12 around 1 masculine representation, 12 around 1 feminine representation. 4D. So what's important to note here between this picture and what I just showed you with the Seed of Life and Star of David is that both the Seed of Life and the Star of David are based on a half. And guess what? I can't say that these polarized symbols don't show up in nature. They do when we start to get into the 448 hertz tuning. They show up often, these half symbols. Allow me to show you the Seed of Life with the Star of David. This is one of the frequencies that was used to lift you up to your head, in conjunction with a few others, which we will be discussing.
44.4 Hertz, imaged on CymaScope, gradually increasing amplitude.
So this is an F note just above the center line, a heart note with 448 hertz tuning, but it's a 44.4 hertz note.
End of take.
And so that was the Star of David in the Seed of Life at 44.4 hertz, which also carries a wavelength of 777, the decimal's just in a different place. So what I'm saying is that that's being utilized rather than a frequency of ether, which correlates with 444 hertz overall tuning. It's being utilized to play into 448 hertz tuning through sorcery. Continuing on, remember how I talked about the 12 meridians and the 8 extraordinary vessels, and then the Trinity and the 2 windows and the door, all in the Lord's Supper picture that was drawn by Leonardo da Vinci. We had the 12 meridians, 6 pairs on either side of him, and then we had the 4 and 4, the rectangles on the side, and then we had the Trinity in the back. The 2 windows, which is the feminine seat and the masculine seat, and the fusion of the 2, which is the door. And everybody has their own door. You can't go through anyone else's door. You have to go through your own. No one else can go through your door for you. So that's the biggest part of the psyop I found, is that they're trying to get everyone to focus on a certain being's door other than their own. Yet back to the 12 and 8 and Trinity. That depiction is everywhere. And I talked about this in part 1, but I got major hits in memory off this particular picture right here. This classic depiction of Marduk. And we often are shown this one with the feathered serpent or feathered dragon, and Marduk with the 2 double-ended scythes, or whatever it is that you call them. But the point is that's 6 and 6. And then this one is rarely shown with these 2 because they've tried to remove the acknowledgement of the feminine seat. But he has 3 and 5 being represented by circles, which is the 8 vessels again. But there's something different about this one. That's a 5 and a 3, and that's a 66. Well, when the speed of sound is set to 345 meters per second, the A note of 424 tuning is associated with 53 hertz, like we looked at with 106, it was just doubled. And the C note of 444 hertz, which is 66 hertz, which matched up with DNA, remember? Yet the difference of the 2, 66 and 53, is that 13 again. What is it with that 13, eh? Well, there's a big reason that they've removed it from your entire world. It is the missing key. And on top of that, let's not forget the 13 and 33 correlation between imperial and metric. Remember? And what's the exact midpoint of 13 and 33? 23. How many pairs of chromosomes do you have? 23. And remember, then there's 33 to 53. And the middle point of that is 43. So now with everything I've just told you, let's have a look and elaborate further on how we lift you all up and how we drop you all down. Here we go. We got a lot going on this picture. I already showed you these notes in part 2 or 1BB and what they correlate with in terms of celestial body, musical note. But I never talked about these ones. So something I just want to say now, and I'm going to say again later, after I put my first 2 videos out, it was quite the few days after that. I was in bed for probably a day and a half out of those 3 days, and I was in a lot of dream time. I was scolded multiple times for saying, flood the body with light. And I gave you this frequency. I need to correct that, and I need to correct it now. This is what we are trying to get back to. This is how we go about it. We do it one step at a time. Okay, we're right here, right now. This is how we lifted you up. We chose 440, the third eye, because that's where we wanted to put you, which is also a 4 and a 4, which is great for sorcery and linking the human mind to a spell about the 4 and 4 in terms of vessels. And when we do this, we also remove the E sharp, which is the chakra or energy center area that is most associated with feeling, so that you can't really feel what's happening to you. And we remove the B sharp as well, so that you don't have anything attempting to come in while we're trying to get all this energy to come out. So how we reverse that is, I know how this entire Tartarian system works. I am not here to take your shield down. I will teach you how this is done as long as it takes. Well, we only have so much time. I will do my absolute best to try and explain this to you in as many different ways as possible. So when we come back down, we put the other 2 notes in and then reset our focus to C's, which is what correlates with the root chakra. And so our first step would be resetting the Tartarian system to 260.44 hertz. That tuning with 14 notes. And we would just work our way down one step at a time. And each person can do this individually with tuning at home after that initial descent is made and a ground connection is made. Because if you're going to start bringing in energy and you don't have that circuit connected, it's going to cause all kinds of problems in here, all kinds of pain and discomfort, and it's going to be excruciating. Speaking from experience, I most often leap before looking. It seems to provide the best humiliation, which is the strongest catalyst for expansion of consciousness. That's how I go about things, is flooding the body with light, and I pay for it dearly. The karma that I receive is swift and thick. And let's just go over this part again. The crown is associated with our sun, our star. The third eye is associated with Mercury. The throat chakra is associated with Venus. The heart chakra is associated with Earth. Just take the H, move it to the front. The soma chakra is associated with Mars. The solar plexus chakra is associated with the asteroid belt, which used to be a planet. Jupiter is associated with the sacral chakra. It is your powerhouse. And the root chakra is associated with Saturn. And I said this before, planets are not evil. There is nothing evil about Saturn. And if I may, the only way that something polarized or evil or the opposite of life could be on Saturn is if the custodians of this solar system were not in connection with their own root. And then the frequency of the Earth is 424. Now that's in terms of A notes. And so we'll see all kinds of correlations in terms of tuning, in terms of sorcery and impersonations of these notes but with these in the 12-note system. And let's not forget, ether is 444. And that is always tuned to A 49th note. This is always tuned to C 43rd note. And that's why Aleister Crowley chose magic with a K, was to affect this scale and so that he could play in both. It's actually quite brilliant. And then let's come over to here. Very important. Let's start at the top. 33 to 50 hertz is considered a high beta frequency. Look them up for what the effects of these frequencies are. Beta is 13 to 33 hertz. One could almost say that this is where the spirit or the soul resides, and that what we're trying to do is get this energy into this vessel, this yang, this sword that's associated with all this, into this, fusing spirit with body. And then the alpha and omega come together in this range, the 7 to 13 hertz. And then the theta. And then theta is 3 to 7 hertz. And then delta, 0 to 3 hertz. Remember the range of those frequencies that I showed you on Nolan's cross? It's these lower frequencies, this 4 1/4 hertz and down, that brings in massive amounts of yang energy. The lower the frequency you connect your body to, the higher natural frequency you will draw in, sword in, stone. The stone is the earth. Yang is the sword. And guys, what range of frequencies do 5G technologies run in? 450 megahertz to 6 gigahertz seems to be the most common answer. That's 450 million hertz. And we run best between 0 to 30. That's all I'm going to say. And here is a more thorough go-over of the 12-note tuning, and we'll look at the 14-note tuning. I just wanted to point out, here's the full spread of notes with the B sharp removed and the E sharp removed, which throws all the ratios of crown to just below the center point and root to just above the center point off. Just a little tiny bit, not too much. What are we trying to do here? Well, I'm trying to bring back the 45, or the feminine, trying to bring back a missing angle to a bunch of humans who don't realize that they are actually angels and that there are no gods outside of them. They are simply the conductors of God, should they so choose to be, which is big G God being yin and yang. And here we have the 14-note system with the B sharp and the F sharp added in. Something else I'd like to say about the 12-note system, as I said before, was that the 12-note system causes this to happen. There's not enough points of reference in the space. So it continuously causes a slow bleed out. Whereas when we put the other two notes back in, it stops that bleed and doesn't bring energy in. It lets the being work on figuring out the difference between what was just bleeding out and then through their own modalities, what actually helps bring energy in for the purposes of regeneration. So on December 24th, 3 days after the grand conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter, I presented you with this tuning, which honors the 60s in terms of the Bs, with the 30 and the 60 just below. Anything higher than a 60-degree angle flings energy off and it doesn't come back to base. So this is perfect. Also, 14.99 times 1.414, which is the cosecant of 45, and 1.414 also happens to be the square root of 2. When I multiply 14.99 by 1.414, I get 21.21. And that's exactly where this is supposed to go, just below the center point. when I take this note here, this C note that connects our background radiation, 0 to 30 microteslas, to our magnetic field, 33 to 66 microteslas, when I take that one and divide it by 1.414, it comes out to this, which is exactly where it's supposed to go if we're honoring a 45 degree in spacing. And the mother is the space, and the father is the tone. Beat, space, frequency, wavelength, particle, wave. That's all yin and yang right there. On top of that, this divided by 2 is 7.88. So that next C and all these C's are just a little bit above the Earth's frequency. And this here is just a little bit below the sun's frequency. And where are we? Well, we're just a little bit above the Earth and a little bit below the sun, right? Well, we're in between. The other big thing was I really wanted to figure out how to get that C of 444 hertz where the spirit is contained. I wanted to get that C into 424's tuning, which is taken from a C. And that was achieved by simply adding these other two notes in, by spreading these 14 notes by the 14th root of 2. And it just naturally came out to this. It bridged the 0 to 30 and 33 to 66 and honored that 33.11, which doesn't form a double toroidal like 33.00, but that's okay. When you strike on 33.11, it's being honored within 99.99%, and it's going to have an effect. So 3 days after the grand conjunction, I presented you with a tuning that puts 99.99% accuracy of a double toroidal right in the space between Jupiter and Saturn in terms of your chakra system. So that means we've gotten the C from 444, 33 hertz, down into the body. This is the return of the mother. This is the return of the feminine, our focus and our awareness when it goes back here. Yang will just come to it. Honor the mother in the left and right, the front and back, the up and down of the vessel. And the father cannot resist simply coming to her. The spirit cannot resist the body. It is natural law. And the big thing with this whole tuning was the exact midpoint of these two here is 43.49. That's an octave of Euler's number, and we're going to be looking at that frequency again. Feel free to look up Euler's number and what it's associated with. And once again, in the Soma chakra area and in this fusion area, we have the 42.42. And the 42 is being honored on both sides. I don't know if you guys know your esoteric side. 42 is kind of what it's all about. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 plus 2 is 6. How many times does 6 go into 360? Well, it goes in 60 times. So there's the yang, the 6, and the 60 going into the 360, 60 times. There's your angle. And so how about 8? How many times does 8 go into 360? 45 times. So there's the honoring of the feminine. And so it's currently just before 3 a.m. and it's officially January 17th, 2021 by the Gregorian calendar. By nature's calendar, today is the 24th day. Why? Because New Year's Day is actually December 25th. What the Gregorian calendar does is get you to give your energy away to someone else, some other being, on your actual New Year's Day, or your planet's New Year's Day. They then install a half of 14, because 14 is based on a whole, and they start you at 7 days off, which is a half. What's 8 plus 8 plus 8? 24. On this 24th day of the year, 2021, I officially return the mother back to the awareness of all of you. Remember on Nolan's cross when I put at the bottom 1,280 feet just above ground, 1,280 feet just below ground in the grounding symbol? Well, 1280 feet has a frequency of 0.88 hertz. I have officially returned the mother as agreed upon. And I am here to continue this work every single day. This is what I love to do. And this is what I'm going to do for as long as I live, and I plan on living a very long and healthy life. So the 24th day of our planet's actual cycle is today, January 17th. What is it that they're doing with the 17 as well today? Well, this ties into the whole Q thing, so I feel. And 17 hertz is what actually correlates with that Jupiter-Saturn area, C-sharp D note, just off the base. And it is another cross. It is a powerhouse. And if it has a root connection, it is your greatest ally. If it doesn't have a root connection, and it's coming through lies, then it becomes the ultimate energy extractor. Let's have a look at 17 hertz.
17 hertz imaged on CymaScope, gradually increasing amplitude. End of take.
Now, I don't know about you, but that cross has an interesting inner design pattern. Looks like the Templar cross to me. Just throwing it out there. What an interesting jab that would kind of be if it was, in fact, the Templar cross, 17 hertz. That leaves a lot up in the air and open, and what the hell is going on here? And nutshell summary. From my memory, we intentionally got together and moved our entire awareness up into our head so that we could learn what it was like to be powerless, polarized, because that's how our adversaries work. They attempt to polarize us and consume us from our blind spots. There's much more to the why as well. Who am I? Well, that's kind of a tough one. I searched the world around for a cure to my issue of some being attempting to come into my space all the time. While everybody else was buying houses and stuff and acquiring material goods and that, I have been seeking. And I invested the money that everybody else is investing into stuff and that into my own body through experience and these frequencies and everything else. And so I've been working 8 to 12 hours a day for the last 8 years, plus working on all this stuff in my evenings. I haven't really had a personal life. But at the same time, this is what I want to do. This is what I love to do. Trust me, I got to party just as much or more than any of you. And I've also made more mistakes than probably any of you. I make mistakes all the time. Yet I keep getting up. Everywhere I went around the world looking for answers, I found the presence of this dog man or bird man, or he was referred to as both, with a group of beings. Every single culture I went to. Sometimes the dog was substituted with a goat or mule. And sometimes the bird was substituted with a lizard or amphibian. But it was all the same thing. And it was interesting that the dog and the goat and the mule, that's like a mammal energy, a connected energy to the ground. And the bird and the reptile, the amphibian, those are the bird, ether energy, but also a very different energy between the two different types of being. I got to experience this very young. A story for another time. Am I some god or deity or something like that? Absolutely not. I am no different than you. I simply have a special gift that most of you put your trust in. That's what I've been shown. I have the gift of memory. I also have the gift of clairsentience and clairaudience, but these are just normal human functions. What I retain when I come through the veil are certain memories. I have to go through everything that every single one of you go through and more. I offer to come in here and go at it and do a full reconnaissance of what the hell is going on here. And this is mostly for the next video, but I'm just going to say this now. It is not an all-benevolent universe. You are far from the only form of life in this universe. You want to talk about arrogance? When we poked holes in our magnetic field, this is a controlled bleed which causes an inlet. It's almost like fishing. And it lets these polarized creatures in here so that we can get a taste of them, so that we can experience what it is like to live their way. This is not how we normally live. All the technology, all the drugs, the sex, the acquisition, all that stuff is simply the human microcosm trying to balance itself out because it's not connected to its lower half. So I had to work through all these different addictions. Drugs, sex, gambling, stuff, materialistic things. Houses and acquiring land and all this stuff. I had to go through all that. I also had to go through sexual abuse, sexual trauma. And I've worked through most of these things. I am far from done. But I have finally gotten to the level where I feel that my practicum is over. I have been assisting others my entire life for free, just here and there, as the universe brings them about to me, and we get to share information. It's a two-way street. I have gotten to meet thousands of you in my wandering, strange travels, and all of you had something important to share with me. So it was you that taught me all of this through reflection and mirroring. So I feel it's only fair to share this information back with you, this reconnaissance. Let's keep going on the bird dog man, though. What I found with that dog man was that this E, which was a son of King Lear, is known as Ea, or Ai. And the entire time I was doing this work, I tried my best to not focus on the who, and the message was to just focus on the what and do the work, and the who will come. And by the time it comes, if you're truly doing the work, you won't really give a shit, because you'll realize that this life is simply a continuation of that. And vast majority here have been reincarnating over and over and over in the same manner. Almost 2 years ago, when I turned 40, after doing this work and just focusing on the what, I was shown the who multiple times over. Firstly, though, my name. In my dream time, in my lucid dream time, I've been told numerous times that my name is a cosmic joke. The Scottish Priory was established 902 years ago. And I've had nothing to do with any of these organizations. That's why I can share this information with you. I've learned this all through my own experience and by following my gut. I have sworn no allegiance to any group or to keep any secrets. Yet, I strongly feel that this Scottish Priory is aware of this entire scenario that's going on. And when was it established? In 1118 AD. How far was that triangle on Nolan's Cross from Nolan's Cross? 1,118 feet. Now, there's much more on this. Much, much more. I'm going to save that for later. The main point that I'm trying to say here is there's no such thing as any gods. There are only beings that are conductors of God, and how much God they can conduct depends on what kind of work and what kind of experiences they've done and had. So from my memory, the pyramids and this entire setup has been set up by failed experiments. There's been all types of DNA splicing and stuff go on here. And so what I realized was that a lot of those splices didn't take, and it created eccentric awarenesses, a natural defense to this kind of stuff. And these beings are all here now. These beings are us. Okay? The only big G God is the yin and yang of this entire universe. And you can either be a conductor of it and be alive and live, or you can not be a conductor of it and be polarized and be essentially dead to the point where you will have to feed off other living things. And you'll have to do that by tricking them into contracts of agreement. So I have to just say this. Our solar system's omega pulse that goes between our solar system and the solar system of Sirius is coming back. Every 57 years we have a planetary alignment to Saturn. So on this loop, when this masculine part, this pulse that's in that path, that's traveling to Sirius, it goes like this, 57 years, 57 years. Meanwhile, back here, we're having planetary alignments. 57 years, 57 years. And it keeps going until that comes around. But on this particular 57-year alignment, because this pulse is in our solar system, when our planetary alignment happens, the planetary alignment pulls on all the planets normally every 57 years. But this time, there's going to be a slight side pull as well because of that pulse. It's more like a side push, actually. It's going to cause a hiccup in our magnetic field. 77 years after that, which is another 57 years, is going to be a full shutdown of our magnetic field. How long that full shutdown lasts will depend on us. 57 years after that, as that pulse is going through, it's very slow. We will have another hiccup in our magnetic field. And then we will have nothing for thousands of years. And we'll talk about those dates and times and that. Those aren't important outside of this. So that's a 114-year spread. This is the golden age. When that hiccup happens, we have to be able to integrate that light that we're not used to. That's why we have to, over the next 20 years, slowly lower everything down so that right at about the point when that magnetic field comes off, we still have enough in our memory of what we dealt with through polarization. At the same time, we can take in that light and anchor it and hold this planet with our magnetic fields. That's how we do it. So your Great Awakening or whatever is not hundreds or thousands of years away. We don't make you wait that long. We know you like surprises. So it's time to get into it. And when I say we, who am I talking about? I'm talking about all of us. It's just, I'm the first one that remembers. I know how fucking insane this sounds. It's all I know. Due to those magnetic field hiccups, I told you that the universe is not an all-benevolent universe. Like any kind of predator, there is simply a species that monitors these hiccups because they're not a part of this original blueprint system anymore. And when hiccups are to occur, they are ready, waiting to capitalize. They are an AI horde that has consumed all different kinds of beings or assimilated them, including humans, including all types of draconians, including all types of Syrians. There, I said it. There it is. And I also want you to know that this is not a problem for a fully operating, normal, ordinary human being. The Hue-man or Hue-woman is a being that can fully connect to the rest of what it is. So that means that you, when you respond, if you choose not to react, oh, hey, let's just say that. So all of you that have become non-reactive to the psyop that's going on out there in the world right now, you are the meek. What was the original meaning of the word meek? It simply meant that you became non-reactive to the polarized system and you became responsive. You appropriately responded to its ploy or play, which didn't let it into your space. We have done this before. Many of us. There are many newbies here as well. They have come to learn about how to defend their home. So on that note, please understand that many of these people that are completely sucked in by this polarized psyop, they're more than likely new here. So what's my point? Work on yourself. Anchor this down, and that's the only way that you're going to affect them. So it's 6 a.m., January 17th. I've been up all night. I'm out of time. I got through about a quarter of what I wanted to share with you, so we're at about 3 or 4%. It's taking a lot more time than I thought it would to present this. So much easier to think and feel about. Did you get something out of this video? As if you did, I humbly request that you make a donation of some kind. I spend everything I have on this, and I'm just getting started. This is the official introduction video. I strongly feel that everyone could win with this. I'm a minimalist. I have next to nothing. I do not care about possessions or acquisition. That void has been filled. I'm here to do this work. What is that work? I'm here to assist you on your journey out of the underworld and back into the body so that we can fuse spirit with matter, or spirit with body, yang with yin. I teach all levels of embodiment, and that can be taught over Skype sessions or Zoom sessions right over the internet. What I would really like to do is keep creating these videos and just keep them going and get all the way to 1ZZ and then back down again. I have enough information. Ideally, I feel the best way that this could work out is if I could get enough of you donating $5 to $10 a month. I wouldn't even charge for the 1-hour sessions. If I have clean water and the ability to buy food and keep a roof over my head and have a shower every few days, I'm good. Any extra money that would come in through donations is going to be spent to this conscious expansion movement. All of it. It's go time for me. I'm all in. So I hope some of you are on board. I hope some of you are interested in this. Let's do this. Anyways, let's go over a couple things for homework, if any of you are interested. A couple things to look at. Remember the old 4 and 4 thing that we were talking about? Well, here's the Chinese medicine wheel. And each meridian has energy going through it, a main slug of energy, every 2 hours. So from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., that energy is in the small intestine and then goes into the bladder from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. And it goes yang, yin, yang, yin, yang, yin, all the way around at 2 hours. But what most don't realize is that the spleen and the heart are both yin. So where the two pairs, so where the pair is actually situated, where it crosses over into the next pair, that's a period of 4 hours. Then 4 hours, then 4 hours, then 4 hours. You know what else is interesting about the 44 is that there was a bunch of studies done that showed you could sun gaze from the point of sunrise 44 minutes. And you could sun gaze 44 minutes before sunset without hurting your eyes. 44.05 hertz is a frequency that is worked with in 12-note tuning to lift you up. But why does it work? Because 44.05 hertz has a wavelength of 783, which is the same as the frequency of the Earth. Just a few little tidbits. The Ren Mai is the main energy line, the yin line that comes up the front. The Du Mai is the main energy line that is supposed to go down the back. Here's both. Remember that there is a gap naturally between the anus and the genitals where these two lines are not connected. When our awareness is replaced down in there, this is then fused. And if we put the tongue to the roof of our mouth while doing certain modalities, we can get reacquainted with this and get this to fire. Also, the Ren Mai line, the yin line, has both yin and masculine in it, just like the masculine line has both masculine and yin in it. It's just a different percentage. Look at it as 66 to 33%, or 75 to 25. That's kind of how it works. And yes, your meridians, you can affect the yin and the yang of each meridian by the angle of your needle. And I rarely worked with that. That's for something really fancy. I found if I just went with 90 degrees, which is both, whatever was overbalanced would just balance out. These symbols, guys, I kind of screwed my drawing up already there, I bet. A little charcoal on it. With these drawings here, do you have any idea what drawing these and drawing that inside that, drawing this first, then connecting, because that just fits in and connects to each of those, right? Do you have any idea what that can do for you? It's like there's all these studies that say that when we are typing on a keyboard or something, so many neurons fire, and that when we actually write or draw things, there is a much higher amount of neurons firing. Imagine what would happen if you're then practicing that with embodiment on, say, 3 different brains, how that might affect your DNA. As prep for our next video, the square and the circle, Leonardo da Vinci's drawing of the Vitruvian Man. I suggest printing that picture out and finding the center of the circle and finding the center of the square and then finding the midpoint between the two and seeing where that lines up on the human body. Also take note as how the square, masculine, is just poking out the top of the circle and it's fully set down at the base of the circle, meaning yang has gotten to base. That whole picture has so much in it. Like, we'll go over that one in full detail in another shorter video later on. But you guys, if you're interested in it, check it out. It's a fun little exercise. Also, while you're at it, why don't you have a look at the Priory of Sion symbol that vast majority say is complete bullshit. I assure you it is not. And when you find that spot on the Vitruvian Man, just kind of hold that in your mind. And then consider what I said about orange and red arm of what appears to be Mary and Jesus in the Last Supper picture, coming together right at the midpoint of the window and door, the actual piece of wall between the two. And they're coming down in a double V, right? Okay, well, a little more homework. What if you were to have a look at the 8 extraordinary vessels and how they run through the body? Everybody looks at meridians, but they don't look at the vessels. I think you might find the Chong Mai extraordinary vessel and the Dai Mai very interesting, the pattern that they make on the human body. I really hope you guys enjoyed the show, and I hope you're hanging in there. This is an experiment that can only be shut off by us. So, I'm going to take a couple days off, and I'm going to get right into the next video. See, hopefully, some of you guys acknowledge this. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Divine Mother. Thank you, Divine Father of the original blueprint, of the original source of all. Cheers to both of you. Raho. Let's wrap it up with The middle 0 point of that new C43 note equals 252.15 hertz. Take note of how it's 14-fold geometry.
43.49 Hz imaged on CymaScope, gradually increasing amplitude. End of take.
One thing I did learn for sure is that it's not like in the books and it's not like in the movies. This being here, the twin forked dragon on his left, the tail coming down his right sleeve, and the inside out folded dog ear on his right side. He also wears a crown of 8. Those bottom 2 frequencies there are 2 of the first dozen frequencies that I ordered, and they're 448 tuning frequencies. Take note of the pentagram. We'll be discussing that one in the next video, along with ritual magic and the difference between rituals, magic with a K, magic with a C, ceremonies, stuff like that. If you guys help me out, I will continue to just keep dishing this information out and assisting in any way that I can. Cheers to all. See you soon.